Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Thomas. Tonight we're back with VC Andrews again. Yeah, he wants me to do a reaction of this. Today we got the old versus new of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Honestly, I only know of the original, the TV special that we all know and love. And then again, I think it mostly was just because of the song, you know, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. We all know the song. But anyway, there's a newer version? This I gotta see. Well, let's see what kind of newer version has he brought for us tonight. So be sure to like, subscribe for more. Hope you enjoy. Let's check it out.
You know Frosty the Snowman and the New Year's baby, Jolly Peter Cottontail, and
There's a ring. There's a ring.
but do you recall the most famous Rankin Bass special of all? And Reindeer?
There you go.
Yeah, of course you frickin' do. Who doesn't for that matter? But to avoid looking lazy, let me paraphrase for you the plots of both movies I'm going to be reviewing today with a more detailed version of the classic song, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Hit it!
Looks similar.
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer had a very shining nose. His father said, "Oh crap." His mother said, "Let's just see how this goes." But pretty soon the whole North Pole, who's as racist as Eric Cartman, started showing discrimination. So much for goodwill towards men. His pop was fairly embarrassed, though maternal support Rudolph didn't miss. And thankfully this one other doe didn't show prejudice. But all of the other reindeers would only laugh and call him names.
Pinocchio?
They never let poor Rudolph join in any reindeer games.
Rude.
After this discrimination,
Screw you.
Rudolph then ran away, coming across two sidekicks, one big, one small along the way. The three misfits got along for a while, but suddenly, behold and lo, a cold-blooded Arctic villain has captured the girlfriend doe. Rudolph nutted up and saved her.
Ouch!
The sidekicks also did their part.
Bonk.
They made it back to the North Pole in one piece. The villain had a change of heart. But suddenly, oh damn it, a blizzard had set in. That was nastier than the rage of 20 Eric Cartmans. But despite this foggy Christmas Eve, Santa had to say, "Rudolph, with your nose so bright, won't you guide my sleigh tonight?" Then all the reindeer loved him as they shouted out with glee, "Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, you'll go down in history." Yes, this reindeer has had quite the history, but this review is about two of the three movie adaptations of this classic story. No disrespect for the Max Fleischer short, of course, both of which had quite significant, yet quite different impacts. The first version from Rankin Bass in 1964, as I'm sure a lot of you already know, took the world by storm, not only becoming Rankin Bass's most famous holiday special ever, but is also among the three most iconic Christmas specials of all time, along with A Charlie Brown Christmas and the Chuck Jones Grinch. And the second was released by Good Time Films, a studio who primarily specialized in direct-to-video, barely copyright-friendly mockbusters of classic animated movies, and decided to take a stab at a theatrical film in 1998 with a $10 million retelling of this tale of the classic misfit reindeer, and it completely bombed, only making $113,000 at the box office.
Hey, look at the beak.
But despite the fact that Good Times never released another theatrical film again for the short remainder of its existence, the movie has gained a decent cult following over the years. And fun fact, I was actually one of the very few people who saw the Good Times version in theaters back in 1998 when I was 3 years old, and I remember enjoying it a lot back then. But then when I saw the Rankin Bass version next Christmas, my preference quickly switched in favor of that, and looking back at these two movies, I can kinda see why. Not that there aren't a few admirable things about the Good Times film, but I can tell why the original went down in history a lot more than that film. So let me explain to you why as we take a look at old versus new, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Is that from the original? I can't tell. Okay. Huh. 1998. Huh. Guess I must have missed this. Either that or it's just blocked from my memory. Yeesh. Honestly, I'm not sure how well this is gonna go, but I mean, come on. I think this one seems like a slam dunk for the 1964 one. I mean, if 1998 wins one, I'll be surprised. Though, how bad? I think we're about to find out, so let's check it out. First up.
When you're telling a story about discrimination, it's very important to get your lead character just right. You can't just rely on the circumstances surrounding them to make us feel for them. You have to make them shine personality-wise as well. And thankfully, both our leads do shine very brightly indeed, and not just with their glowing red noses. Question is, which one shines better? Well, let's find out with Best Rudolph.
I am not just a nitwit. I'm a deer of a reindeer. Why don't I fit in?
Our titular reindeers, voiced respectively by Billy Mae Richards in the original, whom I've never heard of, and Canadian voice legend Kathleen Barr in the remake. At least for Rudolph's young teen self. His younger kid self is voiced by some kid. But who cares, we got Kathleen Barr. And I gotta say, this choice was kind of difficult because both Rudolphs are honestly pretty well portrayed. They're both awkward and suffer from low self-esteem thanks to the horrible racism they've received, but will nut up immediately when someone they love is in danger. I guess they're kind of like Daniel LaRusso with antlers. But as to which one is better? Well, as much as I love a great actress like Kathleen Barr, I just found the original Rankin Bass Rudolph more endearing. Both Rudolphs are adorable, but Billy Mae Richards almost felt like butterscotch with hooves.
I'm independent.
Yeah? Me too. I'm... whatever you said. Independent. I'm cute. I'm cute. She said I'm cute.
Not bad. Not bad at all.
If only my entrance into puberty was that exciting. Again, Kathleen Barr did a pretty good job too, but she just didn't quite have that awkwardness that Richards had. Plus, for those who don't know, Barr would go on to voice the cold-blooded jock Kevin in Ed, Edd n Eddy only 1 year later, and the voice she uses for Rudolph here is basically Kevin with a cold. Let me show you what I mean.
Go ahead.
Me too. But what?
Almost sounds like Ash Ketchum, doesn't it?
Real smooth, Edhead.
Sorry, Kevin.
Why, you'll be sorry, Squirm!
Is this a nose or a Christmas ornament?
Oh, Kevin!
What?
I just want you to look at something.
Other than looking at a dork?
See, it kind of hampers the awkwardness of the character when you keep expecting him to shout,
Dorks!
and if you think that's ironic casting, wait till you hear who voices the rival Buck Arrow. Plus, the original Rudolph could stand up for himself a lot more. He'd protest to his pop forcing him to wear that uncomfortable black nose just to suck up to St. Nick. He'd tell the other reindeer to shut up with the bullying. Other than telling Arrow to piss off once, I don't remember the Good Times Rudolph ever sticking up for himself. I will give that Rudolph credit that he does do a lot more in the final battle against the Arctic villain, whereas the original is knocked unconscious for most of the confrontation. But I think what I like most about the Rankin Bass Rudolph is, he has a coming-of-age arc. Around the third act, Rudolph turns about maybe 14 in reindeer years, at which point he's willing to leave his two new friends that I'll talk about a little later for their safety, as his glowing nose is making them sitting ducks for the abominable snow monster. And what's more, he realizes that only pansies run away from their troubles, and he has to go home and embrace them like a buck. Pretty good character development. The Good Times Rudolph turns about 14 around the middle of the story, and even there, I don't really see much growth in his character. I mean, I guess he becomes more self-confident and badass, but that's nothing the original didn't do. Again, both Rudolphs are pretty good, but by being more endearing, more assertive, and having stronger character growth, the original Rankin Bass Rudolph's nose definitely shines brighter. Point goes to the Rankin Bass version.
You'll never get away with this.
And to be honest, when I heard the Rudolph of the Neural one, yeah, I don't know. I heard Ash Ketchum more than Kevin. I know he said it was Kevin with a cold, but like I said, weirdly enough, I heard like Ash Ketchum. I don't know why. Maybe they voiced both? Like I said, I swear I heard Ash, but like I said, I could be wrong. Moving on. So who's next, Rival?
One of the many progressive things about the original 1964 special was its positive portrayal of interracial marriage, even if it did have to be allegorized to get past the racist network censors. But like the lead, it is important to make the love interest interesting, so let's see which love interest was more interesting with Best Love Interest.
Oh, the love
I
interest.
am not just a nitwit. I'm a deer of a reindeer. Why don't I fit in?
Rudolph's love interest is called Clarice in the original and Zoe in the remake. By the way, the remake wanted to call her Clarice as well, but Rankin Bass said no. Both stand out for being one of the first residents of the North Pole to show legit kindness to Rudolph and not discriminate against his glowing nose. The only downside, though, is, like so many other female leads in 60s films, the character is a little bland. Granted, the kindness she shows Rudolph is just awesome, but there's just not much to her character outside of support or being the damsel in distress in the finale. But if I absolutely had to find some sort of advantage between the two, I guess I'd have to pick Zoe. Really? Why? Well, where Rudolph is kind of like Daniel LaRusso, Zoe's kind of like Ollie Mills. For one, she actually stands up for Rudolph when he's discriminated against, something Clarice never did, and I just felt she had a stronger connection with Rudolph than Clarice.
Look, we're under mistletoe. Know what that means?
You're supposed to kiss me.
Kiss
Yeah,
me,
well,
my fool.
maybe you wouldn't have run away if I told you, Rudolph, you mean everything to me.
Gosh, Zoe.
Clarice did clearly love Rudolph, but Zoe's feelings for the fawn were definitely cuter. Plus, if she's not Allie Mills enough for you already, she starts out dating Rudolph's arch-rival Jock Arrow, who, yes, is literally Johnny Lawrence as a reindeer, but like Allie, finds she's much more into humble and caring boys like Daniel/Rudolph, and really does own and dump her boyfriend good when he goes too far with the bullying. This gives her a little bit more of a character arc, and on top of that, one that's heavily ripped off from one of the greatest sports movies ever. So this does make for one of the very few things that the Good Times film has to offer to the parents. And yes, Clarice's solo There's Always Tomorrow is frickin' awesome. Basically saying, so what if today sucked? Tomorrow's your chance to shine.
Fair enough. Plus, it's always on YouTube. You can go check it out.
Zoe has a solo too, but it's a pretty forgettable damsel in distress song. And that's really all I got for this one. Both girlfriends may not have much to offer aside from being one of Rudolph's only supporters and the damsel in distress, but Zoe does have a little more personality, and on top of that, one that's ripped off from a frickin' awesome movie, so she does have a slight advantage in my opinion. Point goes to the Good Times version.
Why doesn't he get it over with?
Good Times takes this one. They always do better with that.
Like a lot of my past comparisons come to think of it, a lot of the supporting cast of Rudolph is really anything but supportive. But I mean, the story is an allegory for discrimination, so I guess it's fitting. So let's see which supporting cast pulled off that allegory better with Best Supporting Cast.
I am not just a nitwit. I'm a deer of a reindeer. Why don't I fit in?
Unlike the first two rounds, this one is pretty easy. Yes, who could forget Christmas legends like Hermie the Elf, Yukon Cornelius, Sam the Snowman/narrator, the Misfit Toys, and so on and so on. But there's also another reason why I like the cast of the original so much more. You may notice how un-Christmas-like most of these characters are, and that's because most of them are actually meant to satirize the cruel discrimination of the time, from segregating schools, racist fathers not hearing of their daughter dating a non-white boy, and so on. But while they are pretty bruised, it's clear that all the actors are inspiring Nicolas Cage with their performances here, being as over-the-top and funny as they can be, especially the head elf.
I just don't like to make toy.
No, well, if that's all. What? You don't like to make toys?
Why are you at elf
We
practice?
have dolls that cry, talk, walk, blink, and run a temperature. We don't need any chewing dolls.
So this does make them pretty entertaining, even if they are cruel stereotypes of discrimination. The Good Times film portrayal of the background characters is a lot more traditional, feeling a lot more like your cutesy sing-song little kid movie portrayals of the North Pole rather than allegories of discrimination. I'll go more into this with the best story round,
Yeah,
but
probably
for
safe
now
to
I'll just
wait for
say
now.
they can't quite leave as much of a disheartening emotional impact as the cast of the original. But okay, let's get into the more prominent characters. How about we start with the narrator? In the remake, we have the fairy sprites of the North, who...
Fairy sprites?
You thought they were annoying already? They frickin' sing everything. Even when I saw this film in theaters at 3 years old, I loathed these Arctic Winx Club knockoffs. In the original, we of course have the iconic Sam the Snowman as the narrator, who has witty dialogue, a great performance by Burl Ives, and some damn good songs, making him far more fun for the parents.
What's the matter? Haven't you ever seen a talking snowman before?
We have, just not a whole lot that have been just as entertaining for parents as kids. Speaking of which, what about Rudolph's parents? I do like Rudolph's supportive mother in the new film a little more, but I think that's mostly because she's voiced by Debbie Reynolds, one of the most charming actresses who ever graced Hollywood. But I think I like Rudolph's father in the Rankin Bass film more, because he does a better job at embracing the satire of a concerned pop who's panicked about what his son's nonconformity will do to their family image. The Good Times one never seemed quite ashamed enough about it, which ordinarily I'd say kudos to, but not a discrimination allegory story. Though Arrow in the new film does a good job at embracing the racist, homophobic bully stereotype as well as being a Johnny Lawrence parody. By the way, you might be wondering now, who does the voice for him? And the answer is Matt Hill, the voice of Ed. That's right, folks. We have Ed bullying Kevin here.
That's disturbing.
Now on to Rudolph's sidekicks. In the remake, we have a snarky, wise guy Arctic fox named Smiley, voiced by Eric Idle, and a somewhat bumbling but still lovable polar bear named Leonard, voiced by Bob Newhart. They've got some decent lines and are performed phenomenally by the acting legends who voice them.
How'd you swing it, Red? I just told him the truth.
Do one on me.
But they still don't hold a candle to Hermie or Yukon Cornelius.
True.
Hermie is the most obvious
silver,
example of the
silver,
film going out
gold.
to satirize
Woohoo!
LGBTQ
Yeah,
issues, while with a noticeably more effeminate voice and appearance than most of the other elves, and him not wanting to conform to traditional elf roles and be a dentist instead of a toy maker. Definitely one of the most subtly progressive characters on 1960s television. Then there's Yukon Cornelius, who the original TV ads described as
The funniest prospector of the North.
And that is no exaggeration, he really is.
Fog as thick as peanut butter.
You mean pea soup?
You eat what you like, I'll eat what I like. Yeah!
But that aside, I just felt Hermie and Yukon had stronger chemistry with Rudolph than Leonard and Smiley. The bond was definitely present in the remake, but the original duo wouldn't even hear of Rudolph abandoning them for their safety. He does so while they're asleep. And yes, let's talk about Santa. The Rankin Bass version is notable for being so un-Santa-like. He's impatient, he's harsh, he says Rudolph can't be on the team with his glowing nose even though he just flew better than Amelia Earhart. Okay, bad example, but you get the point.
Again,
and you know what? That's what makes him so memorable. The fact that he acts more like the mall Santa in A Christmas Story makes him, in my opinion, one of the most interesting and hilarious straightforward portrayals of Santa ever. The one in the new film voiced by John Goodman is more of your traditional Santa. He is very likable and treats Rudolph the way you'd expect Santa to, but this guy is just so much more memorable, and again, a great allegory of the politically incorrect leadership of the time. Okay, this round's run on a bit too long. There are a few other cool characters like the unforgettable misfit toys in the original, and this comic relief elf duo in the remake who's not funny at all, but some of the lesser annoying background characters. But Rankin Bass does get the point on this one for having side characters who are more memorable and do a better job at satirizing societal discrimination rules. Point goes to the Rankin Bass version.
You tricked me.
Shut up, Leonard. I found your YouTube page. What's the point in reviewing frozen pizza?
Fair enough. Rankin Bass had that one coming.
Naturally, even though the North Pole is full of people with hearts of ice, there are going to be a few with hearts of ice. Actually, there's a lot of those in the story, but none quite as much as the villain. This is Best Arctic Villain.
I am not just a nitwit. I'm a deer of a reindeer. Why don't I fit in?
Our two villains do have many similarities aside from their Arctic themes. They both hate Christmas, they both are feared by the whole North Pole, they both capture Rudolph's girlfriend, and they both turn good in the end. But the two are also very different in many ways. In the remake we have Stormella, an evil ice witch voiced by Whoopi Goldberg, who I think can be best described as an Elsa-esque hybrid of Maleficent and Ursula. In the original we have the abominable snow monster of the north, aka the Bumble. No, not quite that vicious of a Bumble. Anyway, he's a semi-sentient Yeti, and that's it. He's literally just a semi-sentient Yeti. Yeah, it's kind of a downgrade when you look at some of the other villains from Rankin Bass works. Professor Hinkle, Burgermeister Meisterburger, the Miser Brothers, that creepy eagle. A very slightly sentient Yeti.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
I'm sure this will surprise...
Well, to be fair, I think the fact that you just see it and it's like, oh, I see why. Yikes. I don't know, like, I think this could be going for the old, but I wouldn't be surprised he actually switches around for the newer one here. So, let's see if the Snow Queen can dethrone the Yeti.
None of you, but like most lame animated movies, the villain Stormella is by far the most entertaining part of the film. Again, she's a ripoff of Maleficent and Ursula, but I mean, she's a ripoff of Maleficent and Ursula, two of the greatest Disney villains ever. So as you can imagine, she has all the best lines in the movie, and when delivered through the charisma of 1990s Whoopi Goldberg, she's pretty entertaining for the parents.
I am talking hail. I am talking sleet. I am talking snow and a wind chill factor that will knock your thermal socks off, baby.
You're an evil old witch. That's what you are.
Flatterer. Remember, my little doe-eyed doe, you made the storm possible. Work that out in therapy.
She even gets a villain song, but unfortunately, it's a pretty forgettable one. I also wish they had explained her motives more, like why exactly does she hate Santa and Christmas so much? Did she have beef with Santa like the two Disney villains she's based off of did with the Kings? It's never really explained. But at the same time, she does have a lot more screen time and involvement with the story than the Bumble. Like, it was pretty clever to have her be the one responsible for the blizzard that threatens the sleigh ride, and to the movie's credit, it does give her a motive for that. When Santa won't let her execute those two unfunny comic relief elves for accidentally wrecking her ice sculptures, she says her ice bridge, the only way across a giant chasm that separates the North Pole from the rest of the world, is closed to the public, under penalty of the worst blizzard in history should anyone cross it. Apparently not realizing that the North Pole has frickin' flying reindeer, so the whole need for a bridge is pointless and... Well, in any case, Zoe crosses it to look for Rudolph, hence how she gets captured, and this is why she sets the storm. Again, the Bumble has a pretty limited amount of screen time, and even in the big final confrontation, he gets neutralized pretty quickly. By the way, am I the only one who thinks this thing is scarier after his fangs are removed? Meh, that's beside the point. Stormella is a little harder to take down, and they do explain why she turns good here. In the original, Yukon just manages to tame the Bumble through some undisclosed method. But in the Good Times film, after Rudolph saves her life, she reveals that she's required by Arctic witchcraft law to grant him one wish. Instead of wishing for a normal nose, Rudolph selflessly wishes for Stormella to be good. Hey, it's still more convincing than taming a feral Yeti in the span of just maybe 2 hours at most. By the way, if you're wondering why she doesn't call the storm off now that she's good, it's because those Arctic witch laws state that a storm spell can't be undone once cast and must run its course. Again, it's not saying an avalanche, but a Yeti just doesn't make for that interesting of a villain. Stormella, like a lot of animated villains, has the best writing and performance of the cast, as well as more involvement with the story, so she does ultimately make for a more memorable villain than the abominable snow monster, even if her villain song sucks. Point goes to the Good Times version.
Wow. Shut it, Bumble. Huh. I'll be surprised. Good Times actually managed to work it. You know, actually, I could actually see that happening in the older version too. Like, could be the same witch, but can you imagine? Like, or wait, what if the ice witch here actually hung out with Sam, like, at one point, like, hey, what are you doing here? Like, why are you on my turf? Or something like that. And honestly, I could see that. Though, I'm not sure how they would actually, like, go about incurring her wrath, considering it was bumbling idiots, the newer one. The older one? Maybe it could be like a toxic masculinity. They saw her sculpture, like, hey, bro, let's go wreck it, yeah! You know, that kind of deal? I can imagine that. Anyone else? And I gotta say, surprisingly tied up right now. But all that's left is the story, which, who knows where this is gonna go.
With the squirrel tied up, let's find out which version of this classic Christmas story is ultimately better, Rankin Bass, by looking at the two key components of any great animated Christmas movie, the story and the music. 2 for the price of 1. This is story and music for the win.
I am not just a nitwit. I'm a deer of a reindeer. Why don't I fit in?
To start off, let me ask you, what makes an awesome Christmas story? Well, a good story, obviously. But personally, I think most Christmas classics are the ones that have done things out of the ordinary of their usual Christmas norm. Miracle on 34th Street was a classic because it was about a court trying to debate the existence of Santa, probably the last thing you'd ever expect from a Christmas-themed work. Sure. What made A Charlie Brown Christmas so beloved was it was the first TV special that actually bothered to speak against commercialism and remind us that Christmas is ultimately about the birthday of our Savior. The Nightmare Before Christmas, well, I think that speaks for itself. In the case of Rudolph, a story allegorizing the issues with racism and homophobia are not something you'd expect to see in something Christmas-oriented, and that's why I feel Rudolph went down in history. But covering a sensitive issue is one thing, execution is quite another, and this ultimately is why I feel the Rankin Bass special is vastly superior. Namely, it makes discrimination the root of the story, from Hermie wanting to be a dentist instead of a toy maker, satirizing gender roles, Rudolph's parents having Rudolph hide his nonconformity to avoid judgment being a satire of staying in the closet. There's racial discrimination, with Rudolph being banned from the reindeer games and not allowed to date Clarice. Hell, Rudolph and his 2 new friends literally go to a place called the Island of Misfit Toys, which is kind of like Foster's home for imaginary friends, but for toys whose kids threw them out because they weren't like most toys. A big problem I have with the Good Times version is, there are no other discrimination plots outside of Rudolph's. No Misfit Toy Island, no Misfit Elves, just Rudy. And even what it does offer isn't done too well. There are a couple reasons for this. First of all, look at this place. The designs, the characters, the sky. It looks like the North Pole we'd see in a Care Bears movie. It's just so disgustingly sweet. My problems with this are, 1, this is going to be really unbearable for anyone over the age of 6 to sit through. And 2, you can't tell a story allegorizing discrimination in a world this upbeat and bright. Like, listen to this song early in the movie when everyone is making fun of Rudolph's nose. See what I mean? The song doesn't feel disheartening or mean-spirited.
Yeah.
It feels more like music for an uplifting song. To be honest. And what, the world in the original wasn't also cutesy? Yeah, a little bit, but it doesn't go overboard. Rankin Bass very cleverly makes the world more bleakish to capture the grim tone of the topic it's covering. The colors are more muted and dark, nothing is really that flashy. I even think the creepier than usual designs Rankin Bass gave for the characters was meant to be intentionally off-putting. Hell, it doesn't even open with a pretty snow shot like you'd expect. It opens with stock footage and newspapers of several bad blizzards like the one in the story. Sets it up how this is not a 100% pleasant tale we're in for. The songs are naturally a little more lighthearted, but they have a fine line they don't cross to avoid coming off too sweet. Like, listen to both movies' version of a song the elves sing about how they love their jobs at the North Pole.
Jobs we try out, see if they cry out, we are Santa's elves. We've a special job each year. We're the elves of Christmas Town, we fill our Santa's sleigh, making sure that everyone has toys on Christmas Day.
But atmosphere is one thing, so what about the story? You could argue the Good Times Rudolph is more tragic since he's had to go through discrimination his whole life, where they originally started receiving it at about 10. But quality over quantity, let's look over said scene in the original where Rudolph's nose is exposed. It happens right after Rudolph is having a frickin' awesome day at the reindeer games. He makes a best friend named Fireball, who I guess also inspired Arrow in addition to Johnny Lawrence, who hooks him up with Clarice, and his love for her makes him fly insanely well. But once his fake nose comes off, i.e. coming out of the closet, it all goes to hell. The other fawns start taunting Rudolph. Santa says Rudolph's not going to be on his team and shoots Donner out for trying to fool him into accepting a freak reindeer. Fireball immediately breaks off their friendship. Comet says Rudolph is banned from the reindeer games. Clarice is completely accepting of Rudolph's nose, but her racist father is not, and tells Rudolph to stay the hell away from his daughter. Yes, it's a short sequence, but was all that a bummer or what? Now let's look at the good times version. Rudolph starts out his life with everyone bullying him, albeit in a bit too cheerful of a manner as stated before, but by the time he turns 10, it's really just the other reindeer fawn, and by the time he's 14, it's really just Arrow. Yeah, Rudolph actually is initially allowed to play in the reindeer games despite his nose, only getting banned later because the referee thought Rudolph intentionally blinded Arrow with it. And I'm sorry, but doesn't that kind of defeat the point of the story? I mean, I guess you could argue that they're implying the racist referee is automatically assuming the worst because the culprit is a red-nosed reindeer. Actually, that's probably giving the filmmakers too much credit.
Yeah.
In any case, accident or not, Rudolph did kind of win the games unfairly, so the judge kind of has a point. See what I mean? The new film just isn't very good at making Rudolph come off as a victim of prejudice. So to wrap up, there are a few neat ideas the new film story offers. Like, we learn why Rudolph's nose glows here. Apparently Rudolph is one of the few reindeer whose soul is so great it shines from the outside as well as the inside. Hey, at least it is an explanation. But for the most part, it's just a generic kids' Christmas movie with little to offer to parents. The original Rankin Bass version is a classic written to entertain both children and adults, and offers a great commentary on the issues with prejudice. And seeing recent events, like everyone accusing Disney of being these corrupt liberal brainwashers just for including gay characters in their movies. Hell, a grocery store in my college town once flat out said to someone that they don't hire non-white people. This is proof that we need more specials that comment on these issues just like Rudolph did. So, simply put, there is a little to enjoy about the Good Times film, but just a little. With Rankin Bass, there's a very good reason why it's among the most iconic Christmas specials that was ever made. Point and victory go to the Rankin Bass version, the classic progressive Christmas special that we all know and love.
Santa, that's just not fair.
But Mama, the judge has the final decision, not us.
I mean, you gotta give it. Good Times did have some great villains.
And that's all I got for Rudolph, but I do have an announcement. Murray Reactions and I are doing another collaboration. Why don't we let him give you a hint for what it is?
All I'm going to say is, good luck guys, you are going to need it.
Ain't that the truth? Now, some of you may remember the last time I announced a crossover with Murray Reactions, I played the Fly Away song from Hilda, which I know Murray absolutely hates. But unfortunately, I did promise him the music review that I would not be playing that again, so I'm not going to. I'm keeping my promise. But I didn't say I wouldn't play a Christmas-themed cover of it. Hit it!
Don't let your love fly away, fly away. Don't be afraid to seize the day.
Really?
The 3 words that best describe me are as follows, and I quote: stink, stank, stunk.
I'll be honest, don't hate it, just kind of gets annoying, you know? I don't know, it just rubs me the wrong way. Yeah, let's just say I have a little something for him he don't know. Shh, don't spoil it. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that one. Oof, so gonna get him back for this. So, for now, thanks for watching, everybody. See ya.